What does the Quran talk about? Is the Quran a book of philosophy? Is the Quran a book of science? Is the Quran a book of morals? Is the Quran a book of spirituality? What is the greatest or what is the largest theme within the Quran? And inshallah, this lecture will deal with these questions and answer these questions. But to begin with, you have to remember that there are two topics that are very difficult to talk about. And those two topics, the Holy Prophet himself told us about those two topics in his last farewell pilgrimage when he said that I leave amongst you two weighty things. One is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other is my progeny, my gitrat, and my family. These two things, they're difficult to talk about. In what sense? In the sense that when you look at that narration by itself, the Holy Prophet has put the progeny, his progeny, at the level of the Quran. Meaning that if you take both of them together, you will never go astray. If you take one and leave the other, there's a possibility that you'll go astray. There's a possibility that you'll go astray. And when it comes to the Quran, what does the Holy Prophet say? He says the greater of the two weighty things is, which one? The Quran. The Quran is weightier. But you have to remember that the Quran needs someone who translates it. The Quran needs a mufassir who gives its interpretation. And that interpretation goes back to whom? You and I know. It goes back to those people that know the interpretation of the Quran, which would be the Ahlul Bayt. So when it comes to these two topics, it's very difficult to talk about. Why? Because the Holy Prophet has put both of them at a pedestal equal to each other. In the sense that if you take the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, then you will never go astray. But if you look at the Quran from a system of religious text, or if you look at the Quran, or if you look at a system of religious teachings, you'll see that there is no other book that was revealed to mankind that is like the Quran. In the sense that if you look at a system, or if you look at a book that completely changed the society that it was revealed in, there's no other book second to the Quran. Meaning what? Meaning if you look at the Quran and you compare it to the society that the Quran was revealed in, what was happening in Arabia 1400 years ago, and you look at how much change the Quran brought to that society, you'll see that this book is just not an ordinary book. What do I mean? 1400 years ago, female infanticide was rampant in Saudi Arabia. What stopped it from happening? The Quran stopped it from happening. 1400 years ago, the people of Arabia, they were so illiterate, they were so jahil that they were drinking puddled water for sustenance. What stopped that? The Quran came and stopped that. The Quran came in. 1400 years ago, the people of Saudi Arabia, they were mushrikeen, they were worshipping idols. What stopped that? The Quran stopped that. If you look at a text which stopped society from going further into ignorance, the Quran is the text that you will see that did so much for the society that it was revealed in. If you look at the Bible, you look at the Torah. Did the Torah do as much? When the Torah was revealed, when Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, he came back with the commandments, what did the Jews end up doing? They end up going and worshipping the calf again. They end up worshipping the calf. But after the Quran was revealed, did the Bedouins of Saudi Arabia, did the people of Saudi Arabia go back to worshipping idols? No, they didn't. This was a change that the Quran brought. When you look at the people of Saudi Arabia 1400 years ago, did they go back to drinking puddled water? No, they didn't. When you look at the people of Saudi Arabia after the Quran was revealed, was female infanticide still rampant? Were they still burying alive little girls, little daughters? No, they didn't. So when you look at what the Quran did to that society in its time, you see that there's no other text that did that similar type of things to their society. So when we look at the Quran and we talk about, or we're asked, what is the Quran? Is the Quran a science book? No, it's not a science book, but it does have science in it. Is the Quran a philosophical book? No, it's not a philosophical book, but it does contain philosophy in it. Is the Quran a book of morals? No, it's not a book of morals, but it does tell people how to live their life to benefit them to their fullest. Meaning what? Meaning that the Quran tells this human being how to live their lives so they can completely become human beings. Meaning what? It helps them holistically, not just physically, not just spiritually, but physically and spiritually. Not just for this world, but for the next world that is to come. This is what the Quran is. When you look at the Quran itself, there's one saying of Syed rahmatullah alayhi. When you look at his tafsir of the Quran, he himself, he says, look, what can a person say in describing the eminence of the Quran and its glory? What can he say to explain its excellence and sublimity? How can a contingent being perceive the greatness of the speech of the absolute being? Meaning what? Sayyid rahmatullah alayhi said, look, no matter what you and I can say about the Quran, we're what? We're contingent beings. Meaning what? We're makhluqat. We were created. We have boundaries. We have borders. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolute. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's absolute. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. How can you and I, who are constrained, understand completely what that being is saying who is not constrained? Our aql is mahdud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is non-mahdud. So when you look at the Quran itself, some people, they say, you know what? This has so many interpretations. That's exactly one of the miracles of the Quran. Miracles of the Quran, when I get to the miracles of the Quran, you see that we as Muslims, we say that the Quran is a miracle. And the other faith says, how can the Quran be a miracle? What's miraculous about the Quran? That's exactly what is miraculous about the Quran. The one is the fact that it was revealed to whom? It was revealed to a prophet which the Muslims claim he was unlettered. Meaning what? Meaning that he didn't learn from anyone. And the truths that this book has itself is proof that this Quran itself was a miracle. One. Two, when you look at it from an Arabic perspective, the Arabs of that time, the Arabs of today, still claim that no, this book truly is a miracle from an Arabic perspective. How? Balagha. What is balagha? What is eloquence? Eloquence means that you want to portray or you want to give the most amount of information with the least amount of words. With the least amount of words. The greatest number of ideas with the least amount of words. When you look at the Quran, when you read the Quran, that's exactly what happens. They say there's so many interpretations. This is a reason Amir al-Mu'min, the Holy Prophet, and all the Imam, they said that there's a level within the level of the Quran. There's an exoteric meaning of the Quran. Within that exoteric or exterior meaning, there's an esoteric meaning. There's an interior meaning. And within that interior meaning, there's also another interior meaning. Amir al-Mu'minin says that, 1,000 doors opened up to me. Meaning what? One verse can have 1,000 meanings to it. This is what balagha truly is. One phrase, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, can have 1,000 meanings behind it. One phrase. What language has eloquence like this? No other language. Even today, can the Arabs come up, even the Quran, what does it say? It tells them, it challenges them to bring one surah of the Quran like it. It challenges them when they couldn't do one surah. The Mushrikeen of Makkah, when they couldn't do one surah, it says what? Bring 10 verses of the Quran. When they couldn't do 10 verses, bring one verse of the Quran like it. This challenge still exists to this day. If the Quran is not a miracle, why hasn't anyone up to this day brought a verse like the Quran in Arabic? In Arabic. Are there no atheist Arabs? Yes, there are. Are there no Christian Arabs? Yes, there are. Are there no Jewish Arabs? Yes, there are. When these people, they know Arabic, they can read, write, understand Arabic, why can they not provide or why can they not make a verse like the Quran? Why can't they? People that don't speak Arabic, people that speak English, they say, well, the Quran was revealed in Arabic. Yes. One of the miracles is that it was revealed in Arabic. Even today, what did they say about the Arabic language? The most difficult language, the most eloquent language is which language? It's Arabic. One word can have over 100 meanings. One word. Which other language can have that many meanings for one word? No other language. So when it comes to eloquence, Arabic is the language. 1400 years ago, what was happening 1400 years ago? When you look at the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sent Prophet Isa alayhi salam with what type of miracles? Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he could cure the blind. He could cure the leper. He told people what they ate. What was this? At that time, in the time of Prophet Isa alayhi salam, medicine had evolved to that extent. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Prophet Isa alayhi salam with miracles that countered those types of events. Before Prophet Isa alayhi salam, in the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, what was prevalent at that time? Magic was prevalent at that time. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what type of miracles did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send Prophet Musa alayhi salam with? He sent him with miracles that would counter magic. So when it came to the Holy Prophet's time, what was prevalent in the society of that time? Do you all know? Balagh, poetry, the Arabic language. At that time, if you wanted status within the community, if you wanted status within Saudi Arabia, in Arabia, what was it that people said, yes, this person is baligh, this person is eloquent? Do you know what they used to do if someone was completely eloquent? They used to bow down to him. They used to bow down to them in Arabia at that time. It was in this type of environment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this baligh book. Why? So the people of Arabia understood that this book is not an ordinary book. The speech coming out from this person is not ordinary speech. And when the mushrikeen, when they used to go from the house of the Holy Prophet, there were times when the Holy Prophet would recite the Quran in his home. The mushrikeen, some of the mushrikeen, they would wait outside the house and they'd listen. They'd listen to the Holy Prophet reciting, and when they would go back, they would say to themselves and they would say to the others around them that what he speaks is not of this world. The balagha in what he's saying, the eloquence in what he's saying, is not something that people like you and I can come up with. 1400 years ago. When the people that were completely against the Quran, when they say these types of stuff for the Quran, what does that tell you? When your enemy is praising you, what does that tell you about you? What does that tell you? It tells you the status that you're at. When Muawiyah, even though he was the enemy of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he praised Amir al-Mu'mineen. What does that tell you about Amir al-Mu'mineen? The status of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When the mushrikeen of Mecca, the ones who hated the Holy Prophet, when they were praising the Holy Prophet about what was coming out of his tongue, this eloquence, what does that say about the eloquence? It tells you that this eloquence of the Holy Prophet is not of this world. 1. 2, they asked, how is it still a miracle? 1400 years have passed. Okay, let's not look at something that happened 1400 years ago. How is it still a miracle today? Why do you and I still consider it to be a book revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If you look at the Quran and you look at the science that is within the Quran, you'll see that it matches accordingly to what science says. Dr. Maurice Bucaille, he's a French philosopher and he was a doctor. He passed away in 1998. He wrote a book, The Bible, the Quran, and Science. Famous book. In that book, he himself, he says that what the Quran said 1400 years ago regarding what science is saying now, we can come to the conclusion that this book was not said or uttered by someone who was not literate. French philosopher, died in 1998. He passed away in 1998. He's a doctor. He's a philosopher. To this day, they talk about him in his books. What does he say? He says, look at the science that is in the Quran. If you look at the science, if you look at embryology that's in the Quran, he says that you see that it doesn't give complete details. Yes, that's not what it was there for. But it gives you the general outline of embryology in the Quran. How this human being goes through the levels of embryology and becomes a human being. The general outline is there. He says it, not me. Christian, not even Muslim. What does he say? He says, if you look at the Quran and what it says about the universe, you'll be completely amazed. What does the Quran say about the universe? It says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that we are the ones that make this universe and it's continually, we are the ones that are making it continually expand. this scientific fact, when was this known? This century, 100 years. He himself, he says what? He says that how can someone 1400 years ago know this fact today? How can someone 1400 years ago know this today? He goes on and he says, if you look at what science says about fertilization in terms of plants, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He says that the winds are what fertilizes. How do flowers fertilize? Is the pollen not carried away by the wind? He himself, he says, how can someone 1400 years ago know this fact? That it's the wind. And then when you look at the water cycle, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that it is us that drop rain from the cloud. He himself, he looks at this and he says, even though he wasn't a Muslim, he says himself that what this person uttered 1400 years ago could not have been uttered by someone that was illiterate. This man was truly literate. So who taught him? Who taught him? He himself, he said yes. He believed in God. He wasn't a Muslim, but he believed in God. He himself, he says yes. He was taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was truly a prophet. So when it comes to the miracles within the Quran, you see that they conform to what is, in terms of scientific miracles, you see that they conform to what is being said today. When it comes to the validity of the Quran, how truthful is the Quran? There's just one incident we have to go to. The Quran was revealed 1400 years ago. In Mecca, the Holy Prophet, he had an uncle. He was a polytheist. What was his name? What was his name? Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab was a polytheist. He did everything to try and discredit the Holy Prophet. To the point where if you read some books, they say that when the Holy Prophet would talk to someone privately, Abu Lahab would go and he would ask him, what did he say? And when they would tell him, he'd completely tell them the opposite. He'd tell them the opposite, just to try and discredit the Holy Prophet. If you want to look at the miracle of the Quran, just look at this incident. 10 years before Abu Lahab died, there was a little surah of the Quran that was revealed. And that surah itself was named after Abu Lahab. And when you read that surah, what does that surah say? That surah says that Abu Lahab will enter Jahannam, he'll live in hell the rest of his eternal life. The Holy Prophet had told the people that this person will die a mushrik. The Holy Prophet had told the people that this person will die a mushrik. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, all the mushrikeen, they will be in hell. All Abu Lahab had to do to discredit the Holy Prophet was to do what? To do what? To become Muslim. That was it. All he had to do was become Muslim. Yet he never became Muslim. If you say, if the Holy Prophet is truthful, if he's Sadiq al-Amin, everything he utters is completely true. 10 years before Abu Lahab passed away, the Holy Prophet already said that this person will die in a state of shirk. All Abu Lahab had to do to disprove the Holy Prophet, his truthfulness, was to go to the people and say, look, my nephew, he claims to be a prophet, he claims to be sent by God. He's claiming that I will die a mushrik, he's claiming that I will live in hell eternally. But I'm telling you today that I've become a Muslim. If he had just recited the kalima, what would have happened? What would have happened? Everything the Holy Prophet was preaching would have completely been a lie. But that never happened. Why? He never became Muslim. He died a mushrik. When this event happened 10 years before he passed away, what does it tell you? When that surah of the Quran was revealed 10 years before he passed away, what does it tell you? It tells you that this person is getting information from somewhere else. He's getting information from somewhere else. Or else how could he know that this person was going to die a mushrik? Sallallahu Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If you look at what Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, he says about the Quran, he says that it's a light whose radiance shall not be extinguished. A lamp whose flame shall not die, an ocean whose depth shall not be fathomed. It is the fountainhead of knowledge and its vastness, an ocean that shall not be drained by those who draw upon it. A guidance for whoever follows it, and the Quran says the same thing about itself, that it is a guidance for whom? Hudan lil muttaqin. Hudan lil nas. It's a guidance for mankind. It's a guidance for the muttaqin. If you just look at one of these sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen, by saying that the Quran is a lamp whose flame shall never die. A lamp whose flame shall never die. What is Imam Ali saying? If the flame will never die, it means what? It means that this Quran, this nur that is coming from the Quran, will last until the Day of Judgment. Meaning what? Meaning that every verse of the Quran will apply in every time period until the Day of Judgment. Will apply in every time period. This is why the Quran will never die. And when you say this to some people, they have a problem with this. What is the problem? You're interpreting verses that were revealed 1400 years ago. There's no problem interpreting the verses. But it's not us that are interpreting the verses. We, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we say what? We have people for us that interpret the verses for us. We have people that interpret the verses. We do not make these interpretations ourselves. When Amir al-Mu'mineen says that its flame will never die, this was in Amir al-Mu'mineen's time. We come to Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam's time, and the Holy Imam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The Holy Imam, he's sitting with one of his companions, and he's having a conversation with them. And he says about one of the verses of the Quran, and those who disbelieve say, why has not a sign been sent down upon him from his Lord? You are only a warner, and there's a guide for every nation. For this verse, there's a guide for every nation. He's having a conversation with his companion, and the companion, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, what is the meaning? What is the interpretation of this verse? Isn't the guide Amir al-Mu'mineen? And he goes, yes, that's absolutely true. The guide for that time was Amir al-Mu'mineen. But are you saying, do you want to say that there's no guide for this time? Was this verse only applicable for that time when Amir al-Mu'mineen was alive? Or he was here on this earth? And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, look, the Imam, he goes, look, the verses of the Quran will apply in every time until the Day of Judgment. This verse, that there's a guide for every nation, applies even today. And Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, applies even today. And the companion, he goes, are you that guide? And he goes, yes, I'm the guide for this day and age. I'm the guide for this nation. The Imam himself, he says, look, if the verses of the Quran were to pass away with whomever it was revealed for, then the Quran would be dead. The Quran would be dead. But when the Quran was the last and final message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it needs to stay alive until the Day of Resurrection. When the whole Quran needs to stay alive until the Day of Resurrection, then that means what? That means every verse of the Quran needs to stay alive until the Day of Resurrection. So it must apply in every time period. So when it applies in every time period, who is the guide for the nation of today? Who is that guide? The majority of Muslims, they're still looking for that guide. But the followers of Ahlul Bayt, they say, no, we have a guide, and that guide is the Imam of our time. The majority of Muslims, they say that the Imam Zaman has not been born. He hasn't been born. From the last guide to now, Imam Zaman has not been born. So if he's not been born, everyone that died in that time period, what happens to them? What happens to them? They themselves, they have narrations, we have narrations, they say what? That they say if you die without knowing the Imam of your time, is as if you've died in a state of Jahiliyyah. Or you've died in the time of Jahiliyyah. The time of Jahiliyyah was what time? Before the Holy Prophet came, before Quran. The time where people were worshipping idols. You've died at the time when people were worshipping idols. So who is the Imam of this? This is why the Quran still lives on today. Why? Because this Quran is the final message. We Muslims, we say that it's the final message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when it's the final message, it exists until the day of resurrection. Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad wa alihi Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he says in the Quran, this Quran, it guides. In Surah Al-Isra, verse number 9, it says that the Quran guides to that which is most upright, and it gives good news to the believers who do good deeds, that they may get rewarded. Later on, it says, Alif Lam Ra, this is a book which we have revealed to you, that you may bring forth men out of the depths of darkness into light. The depths of darkness into light. When you look at the Quran, Zulma is what? Darkness. Zulma is darkness. Zulumat is plural. Zulma is singular, Zulumat is plural. Whenever you look at the Quran, you read the Quran, Zulumat has always been used. Zulumat. But whenever you read the Quran, Nur has always been used. Nur is always singular, Zulumat is always plural. Why is that? Why is that? What is this darkness that the Quran is talking about? Is it only ignorance? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the people out of the darkness of ignorance into the light of monotheism? Is it only ignorance? If it was ignorance, then the philosophers could have done the same thing. Isn't that what the job of the philosophers is? What's philosophy mean? Love for wisdom. The philosophers could have taken the people out of ignorance and brought them into wisdom. But why has the Quran always used zulamat? Why has it always only used nur? Why has it used plural for darkness and used singular for light? Do you know why? Because there is only one true light, and that light is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One true path that leads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when it comes to zulumat, when it comes to darknesses, there are many darknesses that lead away from Him. There are many darknesses that will lead away from Him. But there's only one true path that will lead to Him. This is why when you read the Quran itself, it says, look, think when you read. Think about what you're reading. This is why the Quran always uses the word nude in a singular form. Nude. Why? Because there's only one ultimate nude. That's it. When it comes to zulma, there isn't just one darkness. No, there are many darknesses. Darkness of ignorance, for example. That's one type of darkness. Darkness when it comes to morals, that's another type of darkness. That's another type of darkness. Darkness when it comes to how you interact with one another. That's another third type of darkness. When you look at the Quran came to take away or take you out of all of these darknesses, not just one darkness. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, Alif Lam Ra Kitabun Anzalnahu Ilayka Litukhrija Nas Min Adh-Dhulumati Ila An-Nur Bi-Iznillah. Alif Lam Ra, this is the book which we have revealed to you that you may bring forth men out of the depth of darkness into Nur. Zulumat, into Nur. So what does this mean? This means that you and I, not just you and I, this verse is talking about whom? Just the believers? No. It's something for all of mankind. That this book takes you out of all types of darknesses and brings you into nur. Among some of the vices or among some of the darknesses of this world itself, you look at it, materialistic, this idea that, materialism is it. This itself is a darkness. Meaning what? Meaning that this world is it. There's nothing after this world. Materialism, in its most basic form, this is basically what it means. Whatever we see is it, there's nothing after it. Or what? Egoism. Being enslaved to your desires. Could the philosophers ever take you out of things like this? How could they take you out of being slave to your desires if they themselves were slaves to their desires? Taking you out of ignorance to wisdom, we can all understand. Why? Because they're philosophers, they're wise. But when it comes to taking you out of your desires which you're enslaved to, if they're enslaved to the same desires, how can they take you out? They can't. Why? Because they themselves are enslaved. If they themselves were ignorant, could they take you out of ignorance? No, they couldn't. If they themselves have egoism, could they take you out of egoism? No, they can't. If they themselves have greed, could they take you out of greed? No, they can't. So when it comes to the Quran, and when it comes to these types of darknesses, the Quran says these are all types of darknesses which this book came to take you away from. But who is going to explain to you that these are the darknesses that this book has come to take you away from? Who is it? You and I know. It is that second part that the Holy Prophet had left behind for us, that the debate, to explain to us. Not you and I. They themselves, they have no greed within themselves. They themselves, they have no ignorance within themselves. They themselves, they have no egotism within themselves. They have no egoism within themselves. So when they have none of these characteristics within themselves, and they've gone beyond these characteristics, then doesn't it make logically sense that these are the people that will take us away from them? When there's no greed. For example, the laws of Islam. Who created these laws? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes or no? Yes. Is there any benefit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these laws? No. What benefit does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lose anything if we don't follow His laws? No. He neither gains anything nor He loses anything if we follow His laws. But what is, where or to whom is the benefit and loss? To us. To us. If you look at it from the perspective today, in this nation is a nation of laws. If we don't follow the laws of this nation, is it detrimental to us or is it detrimental to the nation? It's more detrimental to us. If we speed, for example, is it more detrimental to us? No. There's fayda for the nation. It gives you a ticket, it gets $400 or $500. Is it the same way for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He created these laws. If we follow it, there's no fayda for Him. If there's fayda for Him, or if we don't follow, there's fayda for Him? No. So when it comes to these laws of Islam, there's no benefit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether we follow them or not. The benefit, the reward, and the punishment is for you and I. It's for you and I. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When you look at the Quran itself, ijaz. What's ijaz mean in Arabic? Ijaz is the Quranic belief that no human speech can match the linguistic aspect of the Quran. No human speech. And when you look at it, like I said before, from a linguistic point of view, there's no Arabic book. I'm not talking about English. English, all these other languages cannot come close to the eloquence of the Quran. Even today, there's no Arabic book that comes as close to the Quran when we talk about eloquence. Why is that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put out this challenge 1400 years ago. 1400 years later, Arab speakers have not been able to come up with one verse like the Quran. One verse. Alif Lam Mim, 3 letters. 3 letters. But those 3 letters have so much meaning behind them. They can't come up with 3 letters? Why? Inna atayna kal kawthar. 1 sentence. To this day, Arab speakers are not able to come up with something that's that short, but has that much meaning behind it. Why is that? If you look at the tafsir of that surah, who was it revealed for? Ya Rasulullah, we have given you abundance. Abundance here, from a Zahiri point of view, this whole surah was revealed for Lady Zahra sallallahu alayhi. Abundance here also is also a well in heaven. A well in heaven. Just two meanings that I know of. Could the Arab speakers not come up with something that has at the very least two meanings like this? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then He says what? He says, let them bring speech like it if they are truthful. You can't bring one verse, bring something similar to it. Why hasn't anything similar been brought? And contrary to the opinion of some people who consider the Holy Quran to be of only and only spiritual benefit. There are some people who recite the Quran, they'll finish the Quran in one day. But they don't understand what they're reading. Why? What is the point? When the Quran itself tells you that you need to understand what you're reading or think about what is being told to you, think about everything, then what is the point of just reciting the Quran? Yes, there's a spiritual benefit, but was the Quran only here for a spiritual benefit? No. The Quran wants you to think. If you don't think, how can you open up your mind? You can't. So these people that just recite the Quran and not ponder over it, not think about it, what are they doing for the Quran? They're doing a disservice to the Quran. They're not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told them to do. He hasn't said just recite it. No. Think about what you're reciting. You have over 500 verses that relate to problems of jurisprudence. 500 verses of the Quran. How many verses of the Quran are there? Over 6,600 verses. So 6,100 verses, what do they deal with then? If only 500 verses of the Quran are talking about laws and 6,100 verses, what do they talk about? The most emphasis in the Quran has been put forth on what? On aqaid, tawheed, qayamat, the day of judgment. But what's amazing about the Quran is as many times as it talks about the day of judgment, it also talks about that exact number of times about this world. What does that mean? That means you do not leave this world, or you do not completely forsake this world for the afterlife. There are some people that do that. What do I mean? Meaning that they go into the mountains, they go into the desert, and all they do is acts of worship. The Quran isn't for that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say to do that. In the time of the Holy Prophet himself, there were companions that did that. They left this world, in the sense that they didn't go near their wives, they didn't live at home, they went to the desert, and all they do is, they do their ibadah. The wives, they came and they complained to the Holy Prophet. The Holy Prophet, he says, is this true? He goes to them and he goes that this isn't part of my sunnah. This isn't part of my sunnah. I pray also, but at the same time, I'm here at home with my family. This is what this Quran is. Just as many times as it talks about the afterlife, it also talks about this world. But many people, they take this interpretation the wrong way. They say, you know what? If it talks about this world too, then that means that we can do all the haram acts. No, it does not mean that you can do the haram acts. It tells you to live this life in this world the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to live. That's what it's meant when it says, that's what it's meant when we say that it talks just the same amount of time of this world. You can't get away from this world. Whatever you do in this world is what affects you in the afterlife. What affects you in the afterlife. And before I conclude, I just want to remind you that when you look at the Quran, as I said, it's been sent for all ages and for all human beings. It's tranquil that in spite of changes in knowledge itself, 1400 years, the change in knowledge has continuously come and gone. But in spite of the change in that knowledge, the major themes of the Quran and the approach that the Quran has on this life, no matter what time comes, those major themes and the approach it has for those people living in those times will constantly stay the same. Will constantly stay the same. Taking people out of ignorance is not something for 1400 years. We've advanced in terms of technology today, but are we still not ignorant of so much more? When you look at knowledge itself, just look at someone who specializes. Someone who specializes in one field, he's ignorant of everything outside that field. The more time you spend in one educational system, the more ignorant you'll be of everything outside that system. For example, a doctor, he becomes what? He becomes, for example, a cardiologist. 12, 13, 14 years as a cardiologist. Because he spent that much time, yes, he'll have he'll have good knowledge about cardiology. But how much knowledge will he have about, for example, the renal system? How much knowledge will he have about the pulmonary system? Will he be a good pulmonologist? No. Will he have as much knowledge about the pulmonary system as he does about the cardiology system? No, he won't. This is what knowledge is. But the Quran, it looks at the core. It goes straight to the center, it goes straight to the core, and it tells you that, look, these are what knowledge comes out from. Meaning what? Meaning that